Hi there, this is Professor Eckhouse, and I'm going to talk to you today about general applications of percent. So we're going to start by talking about just the general equation that you're going to use when we talk about taking the percent of something. So we've got a 20% tip for an $80 restaurant bill comes out to $16, and we're going to learn how to solve for any missing part of that. So notice there are three parts. We take 20% of 80 and we get 16. And each of those has a name. One is the percent, one of them is the amount, and one of them is the base. So you never know what order they're going to be said in the question, so you can't assume they're going to be said in a particular way. You have to figure out which is which. Okay, but one thing that stays the same is the equation that we use. Percent times base equals amount. Okay, so we're going to use that over and over again. In all percent problems, that's basically how it works. The percent times the base equals the amount. So one of those three things is going to be missing, and we'll have to solve for it. So we're going to replace the unknown with a variable. I usually use x. The word is means equals, so the equal sign is the is in the sentence. And the word of means times. Okay, so that times symbol is of. So if we said up here we said 20% of 80 is 16. So 20% of 80 is 16. So 20% of 80 is 16. Okay, so we'll be working like that. All right, so percent must be in decimal form. So when I go to put this into an equation, I'd have to say 0.2, that's 20%, of 80 is equals 16. So the percent must be in decimal form to do any math with it. The base is the number we're taking the percent of, and the amount is the answer after taking the percent. Okay, so let's try that in some problems. So remember, translate to an algebra equation before trying to solve. So we're going to call what number? We're going to call that x. So x is 45% of 120. Okay, so x is 45% of 120. I only did half of an equation, right? Because this means is. I'm going to ease you into this. Is. So x equals 45% has to be as a decimal. That's what we set up above. Of means times 120. Okay, and when you take that in your calculator, you're just going to get x equals 54. So now let's go back and say it. What number is 45% of 120? So we got a number, and that number is 54. So 54 is 45% of 120. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense if you understand that 45% is a little less than half. Half would be 60, so a little less than half is 54. Okay, so make sure your answers make sense. All right, so now that I've shown you how to do this using the equation, why don't you pause the video and give this one a try. Okay, so 125% of 36 is what number? Okay, so you just got to go through this equation and think about each thing. Now, it's not going to look exactly like this every time. It might not, but that's the general gist. One might be on the other side just from the way it's said. But let's think about this. So 125% of 36 equals what number? So is equals what number is x? All right, so 125% of 36. How do we say that with math? Well, remember, we've got to convert this to a decimal. So this must be a decimal. Okay, so it's got to be 1.25 divided by 100. Of means times. 36 equals x. 1.25 times 36 is 45. Okay, so let's fix what we have up here and think about it. So we just found that what number, right, is 45. 125% of 36 is 45. 125% should be more than 36. So make sure you get 45 or something bigger, and we got 45. All right, so next we're going to solve for the base. 33 is 75% of what number? All right, so like I said, it's not always going to be said in the same order. We just speak in English and things come out the way they come out, and it's not always the same. So 33 is 75% of, now we're going to call what number x of x. All right, so take it one word at a time. That's all you can do. All right, so let's say 33 is 75%. We've got to do a decimal, so we've got to convert that to a decimal. Of is times x. Okay, so now all we have to do is solve for x. Great. So now, if you think back to what we did to solve for something that's multiplied, we have to do the inverse operation, which is division, and we do that on both sides. All right, so we're going to divide that. 0.75 divided by 0.75 is 1, which is why we got to do that. And so we take 33 divided by 0.75 in our calculator, and we get that x equals 44. And technically, what you've got here is actually 44 on the left and x on the right, and that's fine. Either way, it means x equals 44. So now let's say it. Let's go up and say it. 33 is 75% of 44. So make sure that makes sense in your head. All right, you pause your video. We'll leave this one up and try this next one. Okay, so hopefully you got a chance to try that. 8% of what amount? So what amount is going to be x? So let's make a sentence. 8% of what amount is, remember is means equals $1.60. And I'm going to leave the dollar sign out for now. All right, so let's turn this into a math sentence. So this needs to be turned into 0.08. Of becomes times x equals 160. Okay, so now solve for x. What are you going to do to get x by itself? Well, they are multiplied and the inverse operation is division. So we're going to divide on both sides and the 0.8's go away, 0.08, and we get x equals 160 divided by 0.08, and I get 20, or $20. 8% of, now let's go up here and think about what we get up here. 8% of $20 is $1.60. Make sure it makes sense. 8% of $20 is a small amount of 20. $1.60 makes sense. All right, next we're going to solve for the percent. What percent of 72 is 18? Okay, so again, we're just going to do this as it says right here. So what percent is going to be x? Don't worry about putting a percent sign on it because we're going to have to think about turning it into a percent from a decimal. All right, so what percent of 72 is 18? All right, so x of is times 72 equals 18. So we're going to divide both sides. We're going to divide both sides by 72. And you're going to get that x equals 18 divided by 72 in your calculator is 0.25. All right, so that's a decimal. We have to turn it into a percent. So move the decimal place over 2 places to the right, or times 100, right? And we're going to say that that is 25%. So let's go think about it. What percent becomes 25% of 72 is 18, or 18 is 25% of 72. However you say it is fine. All right, example 6. This one is for you to try, so give it a try. Pause the video and do what you can do, and come back and check. All right, 87.5 is what percent of 70? All right, so 87.5 is, so remember is equals, no matter which order it's in, it could be at the end or the beginning. What percent is x? Of is times 70. All right, so that means we're going to have to divide both sides by 70 to get the x by itself. and x is going to be 87.5 over 70, which is 1.25 equals the x that's on the right. And again, you can say x equals 1.25 or 1.25 equals x. It doesn't matter. So if you take that and move the decimal place over 2 places, or say times 100, you're going to get 125%. So 87.5 is, now we're going to say it in English, is 125% of 70. Does that make sense? 125% should be bigger than 70, and it is. Okay, so now we're going to look at some applications. So remember, we've looked at solving an application over and over again, and these are the steps. You can pause the video and make sure you remember the steps. Writing a complete sentence isn't always writing it. Sometimes it's thinking it through or going back to the question and plugging the numbers in like we've been doing up above, just to make sure, just check and make sure your answer makes sense. All right, so let's look at calculating a tip. 2 friends had dinner at a restaurant and the bill was $56.18. They want to leave an 18% tip. How much should the tip be, and then how much will they pay in total? Let's do the first question, one thing at a time. How much should the tip be? All right, so we're going to take 18%. So let's first put this in English. What is 18%? Because we're looking at 18% of the bill. So what is 18% of 56.18? And most people skip this part. I would not. Until you get really good at this, I would not skip it. All right, because now you can directly transfer this to a math equation. What is going to be x is going to be equals 18% is 0.18 of is times 56.18. All right, so you're going to find that x equals 10.1124, which is, since we have to go to the pennies to leave a tip, $10.11 tip. So now the next question is, how much will they pay in total? So the total is going to be the bill plus the tip, right? So the bill was $56.18 plus the tip is $10.11. So the total that they're going to leave is $66.29. Okay, next we're going to look at nutrition facts. Okay, so take a look at this question. Pause the video if you need to. All right, so 1 serving of cereal provides 85 milligrams of potassium, which is 2% of the recommended daily amount. That's the RDA. What is the total recommended daily amount? So what is the RDA of potassium? Okay, so we are looking at trying to first turn this into a math sentence. So 85 milligrams is 2% of what amount? How much? Right? Well, that's what we're looking for, is the daily recommended amount. So we know that 85 milligrams is 2% of something. And we need to know what the something is. All right, so 85 is equals 2% is 0.02 of is times x. Now we're just going to divide both sides by 0.02. And we're going to get that x equals 85 divided by 0.02 is 4,250 milligrams. And what we were looking for of potassium. So the recommended daily allowance of potassium must be 4,250 if 85 is 2% of it. All right, for this next one, I went and looked up a Red Bull label and made a copy of it here for us. This is a label from a can of Red Bull energy drink. Using the information on the label, how many grams of sugar is the recommended daily allowance? So after what we just did, you should be able to do this. So pause the video and give this a try. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing we did before, but with sugar. Okay, so there's 27 grams of sugar in this one can of Red Bull. All right, so what is the recommended daily allowance of sugar? Well, let's see. So 27 grams is 54% of the recommended daily allowance, which is what we're trying to find. 27 grams is 54% of the recommended daily allowance. This is X. Okay, that's what we don't know. So 27 is equals 54% is going to be 0.54, of is times, and the RDA is X. So now we're going to take both sides and divide by 0.54 to get X by itself. Take your calculator and 27 divided by 0.54. And I get that 50 equals X. 50 what? 50 what? Well, this other one was in grams right here, so this must be grams. So the RDA of sugar, the recommended daily allowance of sugar, is 50 grams. So we're supposed to have no more than 50 grams of sugar a day. All right, well, I went and looked this up with I'm going to show you the rest of that in just a moment. But first, let's do percent increase and decrease, and then we're going to do a little bit more with that problem. All right, so percent increase or decrease, we take a new amount and we subtract the original amount, we put it over the original amount, and we take it times 100, and that's going to give us a percent increase or decrease. So what you're looking for is the difference between the old and the new. If you get a negative answer accidentally, it just means it's decreasing. I usually just do it in the positive, and then I think about whether I'm going up or down. All right, so the average teacher pay in Vermont in the year 2000 was $45,530. In 2017, it was $60,187. So what was the percent increase between 2000 and 2017? If you want to look at more numbers from across the country, you can look at that source right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the new minus the old, or the original over the old, right? Or we can look at it as the 2017 minus the 2000 over the 2000, however you want to think of it. All right, so the new salary, $60,187 minus $45,530 over the original amount, because we're trying to figure out the percent increase from $45,530. So we put the thing we're changing from on the bottom. Okay, so this is what we're changing from, what we are measuring the change from. And that is really important because these can be kind of confusing, and you've just got to think about, what am I comparing to? So you want to put the thing on the bottom as the thing you're comparing to. Okay. All right, so put this in your calculator and you get 14,657 over the 45,530, and you're going to get 0.3219, and of course we have to multiply times 100. Don't forget to do that because this is our decimal form of our percent. So times 100, of course, is going to give us 32.19% increase in salary from 2000 to 2017. All right, so now that we've learned how to do that, the American Heart Association recommends the following amounts of sugar per day for a healthy heart. What percent more is the RDA that we found using the Red Bull label? So there's the recommended daily allowance by our government, and then there's the American Heart Association that tells us what is recommended for a healthy heart. Okay, so the Red Bull, what we found up above, right up here, was 50 grams is the RDA. So that's what we discovered. So the recommended daily allowance is 50 grams. So how much more is the American Heart Association's, or less? Okay, so let's look at the women and kids first, and that is 25 grams. So what percent less is 25 grams from 50? So we would take 50 minus 25 over the 25, because we want to know how much more the Red Bull is in percentage than what is recommended from the Heart Association. All right, so we get 25 over 25, which is 1. times 100 gives us 100%. It is 100% more. So the RDA tells us we can have 100% more than the American Heart Association recommends for women. All right, for men, it is 36. So we're going to say, well, Red Bull told us that the RDA, so it doesn't really have anything to do with Red Bull, but the RDA is 50 grams minus 36, which is the American Heart Association's recommendation, over 36, which is we're trying to figure out the percent above what the American Heart Association recommends. And that is why we are putting 36 right here and 25 right here, because that is what the American Heart Association recommends. All right, so we get 14 over 36, which is 0.38 repeating, which is basically 39%. 39% more than the American Heart Association recommends. And this is really important that you're able to say that. For women, it's 100% more than AHA recommends, right? So what if the question were stated as what percent less does the AHA recommend than the RDA? And I want to show you how different it is when you do this from a different perspective. So we would still, for women, say 50 minus the 25 the American Heart Association recommends, but we would put it over 50 because we're saying what percent less than 50. So we put 50 on the bottom. And we get 25 over 50 is 0.5. So 50% less than the RDA. So look at the difference here. If you look at it from the perspective of more than the American Heart Association, it's 100% more. If you look at it from the perspective of less than the RDA, it's 50% less. So wacky, I know. But this is how we are fooled into thinking things by having numbers manipulated, and they're not actually changing the numbers. They're just using most people's inability to understand percent more, percent less, percent as opposed to decimal, and that kind of thing. So, and I'm talking about the media. All right, so this next one, we're going to say 50 minus 36 over 50 again, because we're looking at less than the AHA recommends, less than 50, right? So we're going to have 14 over 50 this time, and that's going to give us 0.28. So that is 28% less than the RDA recommendation. Okay, so two different ways to look at that. Okay, so the current October 2022 average cost of regular gas in Vermont is $3.79. A year ago, it was $3.38. Find the percent increase from a year ago. So that means a year ago will be the denominator. That's what we're comparing to. Okay, so the difference goes on top, 379 minus 338. So a year ago, that's this one, needs to go on the bottom because we're comparing to that. We're finding the percent increase from then, and we get 0.1213, which is a 12.13% increase. And you should probably finish that sentence. Increase from October of 2021. All right, the next one. The highest recorded price for regular gas in Vermont was $5.06 on June 14th, 2022. Find the percent decrease to the current price of $3.79. So the source for this one is AAA. If you want to go look at, for both of these, you can go look at gas prices anywhere in the country through AAA. All right, so find the percent decrease to the current price. So the percent decrease is decrease means compared to 506. So it doesn't decrease from 379, it decreases from 506. So we get 506 minus 379 over 506. And we get 0.251. So that is a 25.1% decrease. It went down from the highest recorded. Okay, so from 614.22. Okay, so whatever you're comparing to goes on the bottom. All right, thanks for watching.